Hello and welcome back to the Across the Pod NFL podcast. I am, as ever, your host, Andy Davis, here to review the Wildcard round in the NFL in the 2024 season. And with me today, I've got a special guest, a first timer on the podcast. He's probably what you say one of NFL UK's biggest names right now. If you follow Twitter, NFL UK on Twitter, you'll know who this guy is. It's Pro Football Ireland's Michael McQuaid. Michael, how are you?
Andy, thanks very much for having me on. I appreciate the kind words. And look, I think you're up there as much as everybody else. I think the work that people are doing in the UK, Ireland, etc. is awesome. And I've listened to a number of these podcasts. I won't lie, I haven't listened to a lot this season because it's been very, very busy. But I've listened to different episodes and I've definitely enjoyed it when I have. So thank you very much for having me on.
No problem at all, and thank you for your kind words as well. You mentioned then about all the work UK people are doing, and like myself, you'll also be at the Super Bowl in New Orleans, but you're also going to be at the National Championship in Atlanta in, I believe it's next weekend, and you were at the Steelers game recently as well. You've just been absolutely smashing it, and that must be something to look forward to, the game in Atlanta between God, who's playing now? Bloody hell, I might gone.
Ohio State. And Notre Dame. So it's funny, like I probably should have put this out properly, but it's so basically Connell, who does our college podcast, is going over. I would love to get over, but I work during the week as well, basically. So I had a full-time job working on the NFL in the UK, and I ended up just sort of focusing on the Irish market. So I work full-time as well. My employer is very, very flexible, and it works out very well, so it's great. But one thing that we wanted to do this year, and it's a genuine aim, because obviously if we have the college game, and I know you've been over and back to different games, if we have week 0, it makes sense to obviously try and push and continue to try and see how we can grow college football over here, but more so for a UK audience as well, because we all speak the same lingo at the end of the day. And yeah, just to get the opportunity to go to this game now on Monday night, even have the outlet accredited, took a bit of pushing, but we definitely got there, and it's an exciting few days ahead, and hopefully the game's going to be great for NFL fans listening. We won't have Monday Night Football next week, but we should be in for a decent replacement, I guess, is the best way to put it.
Absolutely, and as a big fan of the film Rudy, I'll be certainly rooting for Notre Dame on that game. I think I love the Ohio State Stadium. It's one I really want to go to, but yeah, that film Rudy means a lot to me. So that will be who I'll be rooting for on Monday. And of course, before we go on to the game, one more thing about the you mentioned Ireland there, and of course, it seems pretty inevitable now that they've confirmed they're going to get an NFL game in Ireland. Whether it's this year or next year, we don't know. But it's all set, it seems now, for an NFL game in Dublin. How exciting for someone who's Irish? How exciting is that to someone who's worked with the Steelers as well? They're most likely the home team. Just how exciting is that for you to see an NFL game seemingly finally coming into your country?
Let's just talk about the excitement, I guess, for now. But certainly, look, everyone's read the articles, and I'll leave it at that. It's an exciting time. Hopefully, it does happen. If it does happen, but I think for a lot of us to see potentially a game in a stadium in Dublin, like Croke Park, for example, is really, really cool. Especially when, I'm not talking about the history of the stadium itself, but more so when it is home to an amateur game where you've 85,000 people watching a sport where the main players are going to teach or to be a plumber the next morning. Like that's what we're used to. So I think certainly I'm excited to see, and the I guess the explosion of the game here, probably by a more fair weather cohort in a positive way, where maybe they watch the game for a little bit, or they tune into the Super Bowl, or they've got a fantasy group. I'm definitely excited to see that. I think for a lot of people, it's pretty refreshing to hopefully just drive down to a game instead of having to fly over, which would be great. I know you're a big Dolphins fan, so I'm hoping that you get the chance to go out to Madrid if it does come to pass this year. Seen all the rumors as well online about that. And certainly it's like just on Madrid and on different places. It's great to see it grow. I think London and what London does is obviously very, very important, and I know that both myself and yourself would not be where we are right now in terms of like the help that they've given us. Like I know they've given us an awful amount of help and support there. But certainly I think eventually it needs to sort of spread out, and I think if you have somewhere that's within a 45-minute flight of London that's in the European Union. I think financially it makes sense for the league. We've both been to the college game. We know how um, we know how well supported that is. Like I was surprised. I'll be the first person to hold my hands up. You know, the Notre Dame game that year, 2 years ago, got me. I was like, hold on here a second. But then even to see the atmosphere at Georgia Tech, FSU, and to see College Game Day come over, you know, if you fly over from the States, we're the first island you fly back, you know, just fly over from. So it makes sense. What I would like to say is, I hope it's not a one-off. I hope that, you know, certainly for people in the UK listening, there's been a government election here over the last few weeks and months. So I know it might take more time and stuff, but certainly hope that if there is a game in 25, that, you know, if it doesn't happen in 26, I hope it happens in 27, 28, 29. There's teams in the market. I feel that Ireland deserves a game. I think there's enough fans here that have dedicated and continue to dedicate the time to the sport here, whether that's through playing for American Football Ireland, domestic grassroots level, through going to the college football game, or just watching the NFL and being fans. Like the amount of people that we see on flights coming out of Belfast, coming out of Shannon, Cork, and Dublin, and Derry as well, is nuts on game days. There is a massive amount of fans here, and I know there's people listening in the UK that will argue as well. But yeah, take it outside London. I agree with you, and I'll go and support those games as well. I think it's overdue. It's way overdue, and it's going to be really really cool. And there's nothing like the first time for a game for the atmosphere. And I just hope it all comes to fruition, and hopefully. You know, hopefully before the Super Bowl it's announced, and I don't know. You know, I'm very much like everybody else. I'm waiting to find out. So, hopefully it's announced soon.
And hopefully Wales after that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, I was watching a video the other day of the Principality. I still call it the Millennium Stadium, but like I was watching the video. I must have been like 12 or 13 whenever Wembley was being done up, and the FA Cup finals were in the Millennium Stadium, and like that's a class stadium. Like there should be games there, and in the same way, like I'm sure people in Scotland and in Wales would resonate if people in terms of the island of Ireland, and north or south, like you know, like spread it out. Like it's bigger than London, and I understand and I appreciate that there is a custom made ready stadium there in London, which is obviously world class and it's fantastic. It's so easy for us to go to anyway. Hopefully, even as a one off, they can spread out to like Wales or Scotland as well. I would presume, as you know, as it keeps spreading out and keeps getting more popular, that might become a reality. So hopefully that does happen at some stage in the future.
Yeah, I know for my commute to work, I pass that stadium every day. So it'd be about 20 minutes on the bus. So for me, that would be so much more convenient than having to get, travel to London or get a flight. It'd be so handy. It'd be so handy. Moving on to the Sunday or Saturday slate. In what they're now calling the Texan slot, it is now confirmed once again after they won on Saturday. They'll be once again playing at 3:30 Eastern, which has been this case for every playoff game in their history. But the Texans did beat the Los Angeles Chargers in surprising fashion. I thought the Chargers would win this game. I thought it would be quite an easy win for them. Turns out it wasn't, as the Texans beat the Chargers by 32 points to 12. Justin Herbert throwing for more interceptions in this game, being 4, than the entire of the regular season put together, which, albeit 2 as ones, probably weren't his fault. Even so, it was another playoff choke by the Chargers. I mean, we saw what happened against the Jaguars 2-3 years ago now, and the Herbert sort of stock on him being, not winning the big games and not to get them in the playoffs is sort of rising now. But I've got to give the Texans credit. I mean, this game I thought all round. I mean, the first half I thought was pretty much in the Chargers' control. I mean, you had, it seemed the first half that the Texans weren't getting anything going, and the yardage they had was pretty poor. And Stroud didn't look quite himself. And then there seemed to be a flick switch. I don't know what it was. There was a point in the game where it was 3rd and 16, somewhere point in the second quarter, and Stroud throws out a bomb to Hutchinson, and that seemed to change the game a little bit. And then there was the interception from Derek Stingley. Just the second half just seemed to completely be switched in the Texans' favour. And in the end, it was a really, really convincing win for the Texans. And they move on now to play the Chiefs in the divisional round once again. PTSD for those Texans fans from the 2019 season. But Michael, what was your take on this game?
I'm really impressed that you remember that was 2019, because like I remember it, but I'm like, what year was that? Look, I actually wrote an article for an outlet in Ireland about this, and I'm sort of thankful it was behind a paywall. I was disappointed with the level of games this weekend, and I don't think it's negative in saying that. I understand it's wildcard weekend, and I do see the fact that some people are talking about changing the seeding system and talking about different ways to fix it up. We've seen, you talked earlier on there about Ohio State, Notre Dame Monday night. Neither of those teams would have made the normal college football playoff if it wasn't expanded. So there is an argument both ways. And you're bang on, like that's what I call it as well. It's like that typical give it to ESPN at 9:30 on a Saturday night our time. We've known, I guess, this year in terms of how Houston have really struggled in terms of protecting CJ Stroud, and there's been a real drop down in his performance year on year, and like not a massive drop down, but certainly enough of a drop down to certainly really affect his confidence. And I think that's something that we've seen week on week. That being said, I thought the Texans would win the game. It's just hard now to sort of find a way to trust the LA Chargers, whether they're a B-Tech version with a different head coach or like a more light version when it comes to Jim Harbaugh with the effective pass and running game, especially whenever Justin Herbert's in at center. Like they just feel like they're almost like warming you up all season, and then it comes to the playoffs, and where's protection for Justin Herbert? Where are the big time plays that we expect to see from a Chargers team that have, in week 7 or week 8, for example, they put 30 or 40 points on a team? It's just there's not enough consistency. And yes, the caveat for the Chargers this year is going to be that, oh well, it was the first year of Coach Harbaugh, and that's fair enough. But if they're coming around again this time next year and the same thing happens again, where you would expect to see Denver try and challenge more. At the time of recording, we don't know what's going to happen with the LA Raiders, and Tom Brady's obviously involved in that whole head coaching search, but you would expect a rebound performance from them as well. They had a real opening in this window here, especially with an opportunity to go to a place like Kansas City, depending on the season, obviously, if they had have won this game. I was surprised at the level in which they lost it by, but at the same time, Danielle Hunter and Will Anderson really posed a massive threat on Saturday for the Texans. And defensively, the Texans were very, very impressive. And at that, if you actually take away from the defense and look into it, CJ Stroud had a pretty average game, if we're going to be honest. He had an interception, he had a couple of 100 yards. I think, to be fair, he might have had like 270, 80, or 90 passing yards, but he was solid enough. Joe Mixon, for me, was the real key in this game. We've seen so many times this year, Andy, where the Bengals have struggled on the run, and they've really struggled to try and get away from that. Well, look at Mixon in Houston. He carried that game for them on the run whenever J.K. Dobbins really struggled for the Chargers. And I like the Texans team. I know you probably have a different podcast previewing this at some point during the week again, but it's going to be hard for them going into Kansas City, especially when you just expect Kansas City to roll over and beat everyone at the minute. But certainly they'll have a bit of confidence. It definitely helps a team whenever they get that first playoff game done, when it's a wild card game, and especially when it's in their stadium. I think that's so important, and you can't put a price on that confidence that those players would have got the overnight.
Yeah, and I think I have to give, you mentioned Joe Mixon, and you have to give the Texans and the head coach D'Amico Ryans a huge amount of credit, because I think about like what you mentioned, Mixon, that one drive where it was 14 plays and they ran the ball 13 times, took about 7 minutes off the clock, and I think that really helped them seal the game. They controlled the game. I mean, it was a 20-point game in total, but I think if they'd gone out and had three and out, and then the Chargers got the ball back and scored, that makes it 12-point game. You just never know, but I think they really controlled that end of the game. They were in the lead and they knew how to see that. I think the Chargers have proved, in both playoff losses for Herbert, they don't know how to keep hold of the lead, and I think the Texans showed exactly that they can, as they proved last year in the wildcard round. And I think I was really impressed with that one drive, because basically that helped. If I look at the time that it started, there was about 10 minutes left of the fourth quarter. When it ended, there was about 3-4 minutes. So I think, that 6-7 minutes made a massive difference. I think it just helped really seal the game. And I was really impressed with the overall game time for the Texans, because we talk about the Chiefs not really playing well, but they're going to probably be great in playoffs, and we saw it in previous years with other teams like the Patriots did it for many years. And I think the Texas team, I don't think they're going to probably win on Saturday, but I think they're certainly a team that you can certainly bank on. If they're not doing that well in the regular season, you can still count on like CJ Stroud and D'Amico Ryans to get the job done when it matters in the big games. They've proved it this year, proved it last year. And I think, like you said, they're going to fancy their chances on Saturday at 9:30 in the UK. Big test for them, but I think they're up for the challenge. I don't think they win, but I think they're up for the challenge. And I think, this Texas team, I think, certainly got a bright future with Stroud because, he was, even though he wasn't at his best, he made big throws at crucial moments, and that's what you want from your quarterback. Sometimes it's just, even Mahomes is one of the best third down quarterbacks this season, despite not having a great year. Part of that is because, he can get it done when it matters. So for me, Texans, Chargers disappointing, but Texans roll on. Moving on to the second game on Saturday, it was a AFC North battle as the Pittsburgh Steelers season ended to the Baltimore Ravens. Derrick Henry stealing the show, and I want to get a few stats up from this game. Derrick Henry became fifth all-time for most rushing yards by a 30-year-old or more in a postseason game. Total was 155 at the age of 31. It is his fourth postseason game with 100 yards or more, and that is tied for the most all-time alongside Terrell Davis. And it was a really comfortable win for the Ravens, I thought, overall. The actual score total was 28-14, and I thought this game, I think this was Derrick Henry game. And people who know the podcast will know my thoughts on him. He's the reason why I want them to win the Super Bowl this year. And I thought overall it was a pretty routine win for them. I thought Steelers really weren't up to much, and I thought overall it was, Lamar Jackson not really answering his critics. I think the critics sort of come when it comes against teams like the Chiefs or the Bills, a bit better teams. But for me, I thought it was a really dominant performance. Steelers team who's been threatening on defense didn't really show any threat to me towards the Ravens at all. And it was pretty comfortable. And the Ravens move on, and they will play the Bills, who beat the Broncos in another convincing win, 31-7. But for you, what was your take on the Ravens game? Because it was seemingly very comfortable for the Ravens this game.
Yeah, I need to take my Steelers hat off here for a second, just in terms of doing their podcasts and stuff. I mean, look, just generally on that, anybody that you really spoke to over the last few days were quite cautious. That being said, this Steelers team, before they lost 4 in the bounce, had 10 wins on the board. So to see such a huge drop off in such a massive amount of time is definitely, in such a short period of time, is definitely alarming. And for people that aren't aware, like Mike Tomlin does not call his plays; it's his OCs, his DCs, and he stands there and watches it happen. There's a lot to pick apart here for me. I guess firstly, just on the Ravens, Derrick Henry was absolutely sensational. That play, which was almost deemed as the good night play, the massive run where he ran in for a touchdown, was unreal. Nearly 200 yards on the day. He is literally, I think I wrote it this morning in an article, he is a phenom when it comes to attacking any defense in the league. And frankly, for as bad as the Steelers were, on the average points of time, and we've seen it against Cincinnati in week 18, they had a hell of a defense. So for the Ravens to run around them like that, and there are conversations to be had around how much effort were some players putting in, I fully agree with that. But for them to really get that against guys like TJ Watt, I think is concerning for the Steelers, but more so it shows how well the Ravens actually done, I think, overall. In terms of the Steelers, I sort of touched on it there a little minute ago. There was a play, I think it might have been Henry's play. I can't remember the exact person it was, but it just looked like the guys gave up. It looked like they knew the game was done, and that's never a good sign. That being said, though, I don't see why you would fire Tomlin. To win 10 games a season, yes, it's more consistency and there's nothing happening in the playoffs. I just don't see why you would get rid of somebody like that. He's won a Super Bowl. He knows the team inside and out. The Rooney family trusts him, so I just don't see why you would do that. I understand why some people would like a bit of change there. I think if you're going to change something, change a quarterback. I was a little bit surprised in terms of how the drop-off has went in Russell Wilson. He redeemed himself a lot earlier in the season whenever he came in for Justin Fields, who obviously had a really, really good start to the year. That's 5 nights watching football on the roof for you there. But But more so, I remember going back to the Steelers watch party in Dublin when it was the Colts. Um, and you just think of these small moments that have just ticked away and ticked away and ticked away. And eventually it just didn't work. Najee Harris had under 20, sorry, yards rushing on the day. That's more than likely his final game for the Steelers. And George Pickens, who had 80 odd yards and a touchdown, his attitude needs to improve. It really, really does. If he wants to remain a player, or if he wants to remain a consistent player on this team, he needs to be able to improve his attitude. I was surprised at some of the offensive performances, Andy, against the Bengals in Week 18. It just didn't improve. It didn't get any better. It's clear that they had peaked in whatever way possible a few weeks ago, and it just wasn't good enough. Now, what I will say is, I think if the team were alert and on it, and if they had a way to get the ball down the field, they would have had a chance. Like, they knew they had to go in and score anywhere between 25 to 32, 33 points against this Ravens team. They held them to 28, and they couldn't get the job done. More so for me, the thing that affected me or annoyed me, I guess, not as a fan, but as somebody that obviously does their audio output, and I'm very gracious to do that, being 21-0 down at halftime, where's the energy? The game was gone then, and it's just disappointing that they couldn't get over the line, especially when, if you believe any rumours or something about them playing over here next year, look, the reality is they'll come back stronger. I do think they need to make a serious decision at quarterback, though, and potentially go after somebody, whether that's in free agency or whether that's in the draft, because the Steelers have got a stout defense there. You just got to try and find a way of topping up that offense.
You mentioned Tomlin there. I mean, it's he hasn't won a playoff game now for 8 seasons. He only had 2 seasons with a playoff win since 2010. You mentioned there about the court of iron. I mean, there's definitely pros and cons of both. I mean, obviously the cons being, if you get rid of him, you're losing a guy who's not had a losing season, and he's been there for since 2008, no, 2004, at some point in the mid
2006, I think. 2006. It might have been 07, just after Coach Carr won a Super Bowl, then he came in straight after, yeah.
So yeah, you look about the thing like that, you lose that consistency, but at the same time, I think sometimes they being sort of I call it the Kirk Cousins trap, where you're never good enough to win a Super Bowl, but you're never bad enough to be, in that top 5, top 10 draft picks. And I think, yes, your consistency, having 8, 9 winning seasons, 10 winning seasons, but if you keep having these solid winning seasons and then losing in the first round of the playoffs, then really, is that really enough? And I think there's definitely reasons why I could see Coulson to be fired or replaced. But then the question becomes, who do you get that's better? Because Tomlin is, that if he was to be let go by the Steelers, you can guarantee, I reckon at least 20 teams would be interested. Definitely the Raiders would be interested. I think there'd be a lot of teams that have even good head coaches that would probably replace him for Tomlin. But I think for the Steelers, a team that, it's also such a history, 6 Super Bowl wins are tied most in history. They want more than just wildcard performances. They want to see them team competing for AFC titles, competing for Super Bowls. And right now, there's something missing, like you're saying, and it's, I think they're definitely trapped. And the Steelers, for me, have an interesting offseason coming ahead. Once again, not a high draft pick, but they obviously there.
There's a lot to do, Andy.
Yeah,
I think it's definitely fair enough to ask that question, and certainly if I've seen it firsthand in terms of their motto, and they strive to be the best at what they do. They'll be very disappointed that they let a 10 win season slip from the AFC North. I think I'm disappointed. So I can imagine they're disappointed. But look, you got to give props to the Ravens. They wanted it more.
Yeah, and I think there, for me, I said it really all season. I do think it's Lamar Jackson's year. And now a quick get for you, Michael, because we do ask all our guests this time of year. I'm still going for the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. Who would your pick be? If you can have a matchup or just a winner, but who are you picking? Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl?
Who would I like to see win it? Do you know, after last night, I'd love to see the Lions win it. I'd love to see the Rams win it. I'm getting mixed up with Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff already. Just in the way that they play offense, they're a fun team to watch. I think what will happen, the inevitable thing that's going to happen, is the Lions will get the NFC champion. Like, they'll make history by having the NFC Championship at home in Detroit for the first time. They'll get to the Super Bowl and they'll face the Chiefs, and the Chiefs will win a three-peat. That's what I think is going to happen. I don't want that to happen. I'd like to see the Lions against the Bills
Mm.
because I think you've the storyline of one's never won it, both have never won it, but one has never got to that stage, and then the other has been disappointed and let down so many times. My county in Ireland is a little bit like the Bills. Not anymore. They lost a lot of All Ireland finals, so I know what it's like to lose and then finally get over the hump. They've won four now, so I'd like I'd like to see that. I understand and I fully can see why you want the Ravens to get there. I just feel like if you're gonna try and have a box office Super Bowl, it needs to be the three-peat against the never got there, or it needs to be the Bills against the Lions for me. I think it'll be Kansas City Detroit, and I think Kansas City will win the Super Bowl. As boring as it sounds.
I think that's a safe pick. I think that's a good pick to have. I mean, if the Vikings had won last night, spoiler alert, there's still a potential to have all four teams in the conference championship never winning it. The Vikings could have played the Lions, and we could have the Bills against the Texans. So I think there's still a chance for three of those teams. I think that would be quite cool to have three teams who never won it before. But ultimately, I think I can't see it not being the Chiefs. And I think well, I still do believe that they can't win it every year. And I think that I compare it to like Manning and Brady. You think about all those years Manning couldn't get over Brady. Every year he beat him, but then one year he beat him. And I think this
Yeah.
is the year where Lamar Jackson finally beats him. I just think that we saw what happened last year with the Ravens Chiefs game. The amount of struggle they had in the run game or even running it at all. They had very little rushing attempts. I think you get someone like Derrick Henry who's having arguably the best year of his career. I think that might be the piece in the jigsaw they were missing, and I think that could be the difference and help them win it. And I think they'll be obviously random close in week one in the opening day, although I don't really take week one games really too seriously. Um, I think they'll want revenge for that game as well about how it ended, and I think the Ravens will be, eager for more. But they've got to get past the Bills first, who did beat the Broncos, as it before, by 31 points to 7. If I'm honest, I've got a confession to make. I fell asleep and missed the entire first half. So my
That's impressive at 6 o'clock in the evening. Like that's impressive. I have to give it to you.
do you know what it is? I'd been out late with friends the night before, stayed up to watch the NFL, and then I had a meal with family, a Sunday roast. I was all sort of I was in a bit of a carb coma, and yeah, I missed a penalty shootout of Man U Arsenal, and then missed the whole first half of Bills Broncos. So yeah, it's my knowledge of this game isn't as good as the others, but for you, Michael, what was your take on this Bills game? From what I saw in the second half, it just seemed to me like a bit like Ravens Steelers, just a complete domination and one side just being completely outplayed.
Yeah, I had to preview the Bills Ravens game today for somewhere, and I have the stat in my head, but I can't really say it out loud. I guess what I will say is, for about 5 minutes on Sunday, when the Broncos went 7-zip up, obviously that's a big deal for them because it's the first time they get to a playoff game in 8 years, or even almost 9 years since Super Bowl 50. There was a 5 minute period where I think people were going, hold on a second here. I believe the pass was the first rookie to rookie touchdown pass in the playoffs. If I'm correct in saying that, from Bo Nix. Bo Nix has been unreal this year for the Broncos. He showed signs and glimpses of that. In terms of what they've been able to achieve with an 80 odd $1 million cap hit, that a dead cap hit, sorry, that's been so difficult. I remember people laughing at them whenever they obviously let Russell Wilson go and took that hit over 2 years or over 3 years. And for them to be able to do what they've done has been nothing short of sensational. But the Bills and frankly, like a lot of teams in the league could have folded whenever they went 7 down in the manner in which they did because they really shut the crowd up. Josh Allen doesn't care. He literally went up straight, ran the ball, pumped the ball down with James Cook, 100 odd plus yards, touchdown on the day. But the Broncos got nothing going from that. They didn't score again in the game. They didn't really threaten to score, bar a couple of times in the first quarter where they got the ball down or, for whatever reason. They had a doink which was close to halftime, which actually would have made it 10-10, which maybe, subconsciously, may have changed the game a little bit, but I think it was always going to be Buffalo. And from hearing from a lot of the beat writers in Denver, anybody that they spoke to fans wise in Buffalo really thought that they were looking past this game already in Buffalo. I certainly think there'll be an improvement in Denver next year. I'm excited to see what's going to happen there. But certainly for Buffalo, they're used to all these playoff games. They got to deliver at some point. We're going to see what happens this weekend against the Ravens.
The game is going to be absolute cinema. I'm so excited for that, and I think we talked about the division. We talked off camera about the divisional round being the best weekend of the season, and I do feel like this is going to be legendary stuff. Moving on to the later game, as the Eagles stomped over the Packers by a score of 22-10 in a dominant performance. An injury hit Packers. Already lost Watson. They also lost the likes of Dontavian Wicks and also Jaden Reed towards the end of the game. I said the Packers all year long were going to win the NFC. That was my sort of dark horse pick, and that was proved completely wrong. I thought the Eagles were so impressive in this game. I really thought that they barely gave Love any time to really to do anything. I thought he was constantly running around, being chased by the Eagles D. There was a point in the game I thought was really telling for me. I think, well, first of all, the first play of the game was really sort of foreshadowed how the game went. That fumble from Keyshawn Nixon right at the start of the game, I thought that sort of really just, and they got a touchdown from that resulting play, and I think that just almost killed momentum straight away for the Packers. I don't think they really recovered from it. There was a point in the game where they were only down by about, I think it was 7-3 at this point in the game, and then Jordan Love, I think about 3 minutes remaining, he makes his great pass to Jaden Reed. We thought, oh, here we go, they're finally clicking. And then the very next play, or maybe the play after that, Love threw an interception to Zach Bowen, and Zach Bowen had an impressive game. But I thought that for me was, I think that was sort of the game in a nutshell. They're trying to get back in the game, but the Eagles just completely just dominated them. And I thought that was really the point of the game where I thought, right, the Eagles have won this. There's no way back. And I think Jordan Love threw, I think there's 3 turnovers in total, if you count the defense and special teams. That was forced on Green Bay. Just seeing whatever the Packers did, the Eagles just had their number, and I felt like it was just a complete mismatch overall. But for you, Michael, what was your take on this game?
Eagles defense really showed up, really limited the Packers what they could do. They were obviously coming in after losing 2 games at the end of the regular season, which is unlike a Green Bay side that we're used to in the current generation anyway. It's been a weird few weeks for them. I feel like almost a bit like the Steelers. The batteries have started to run out a little bit, and they really just couldn't get over the line at the end. But that being said, there was a point in this game where offensively the Eagles were not getting the ball down the field, and I think that's going to be a real issue for them if that continues against the Rams coming into this weekend. But more so, I think it was a combination between both the fact that the Eagles were just struggling generally to actually get a bit of thing together, but more so it was the position, it was the strength of the Packers defense, which really kept them in the game. And frankly, you can sit here and say that the Packers defense done their job. The Packers defense done what they had to do to get over the line in the game. They only conceded 22 points, and 6 of those points, were towards the end of the fourth quarter when the game was done. This was a tight game. It might not seem like it, but it was a tight enough game in the sense that it just took one flip. And if I'm a Packers fan, I'm really disappointed because I genuinely think a Rams team, I think a Commanders team would have come in and beat this Eagles team the way they played on Sunday. It's going to be intriguing to see, firstly, how Philadelphia approached this game against a potent Rams offense at the weekend, but more so it's going to be very, very interesting for me to see how Green Bay adapt. I think a lot more is expected of Jordan Love. We know how good Tucker Kraft is. Josh Jacobs had a strong game on the run. They obviously have to regroup and go again for 2025.
Yeah, and I think that if you had Watson fit, if you had Nick Wicks and Reed fit the whole game, if you had J. Alexander back, I think this team's young. Quite a few on rookie deals. It's a young team, and I think for the Packers, I think whilst they haven't made finals in the playoffs this year, I think they're certainly a team to look out for in the next few years. I really do think they're a good team. They got, I think, definitely a top 5 coach in the league and Matt LaFleur. I think it's a really good team, and I think they're definitely ones to look out for in the next year or two. Moving on to the penultimate game of the week. I think that's quite easy to say. I called it the toughest game of the week when I wrote an article for the franchise tag, and I think it was the toughest one to call, and I thought this game was by far the best of the week. Commanders winning it by 23 points to 20. The Zane Gonzalez kick as time expired, doinking off the crossbar of the goalpost and going in, which will probably bring a lot of pain to Bears fans and anyone called Cody Parkey who's listening to this podcast. And I hate to say it because I'm a big fan of his, and he's done so much. And Todd Bowles said it himself; he's the reason why they're there. But I hate to say it, that's on Baker Mayfield, because at a point in this game it was 17-13 to the Buccaneers, and then there was the fumble. There was a mix-up. He was trying to hand off to the jet sweep to I think it was Jaden McMillan, and that fumble. They get the ball. Commanders do get a touchdown, and then it goes from being potentially you can go 20-10 up. They were 13-10 up at the time, so then they were 17-13 down, and then the Commanders just end up winning that game by 3 points. And I think there was a lot of Commanders points at the beginning, went for a lot of fourth downs and missed. And I kept thinking to myself, are they going to regret these chances? And there was a point in the game where they were, I said before, they were 4 points down. And I thought the Buccaneers team might win this, and then that happens, and it just completely changes the game. And for me, I think it's a shame for the Buccaneers. I think they were a really good story once again, but credit to Jaden Daniels, really credit to him, because he becomes the fourth quarterback in history to win a road game in a rookie year, behind Joe Flacco, Mark Sanchez, and Russell Wilson. And there was just so many points in this game where he stiff-armed the player. There was some really good third down throws. I think Daniels, I'm sure we all know by now, they've got a star in their hands. They really do. He just proved once again in a big moment he got the job done. And Commanders, I think they got a tough game against the Lions. It wouldn't shock me if they win that game. I think they were really impressed me at times, but they were, I think, given a helping hand by Baker Mayfield. And I do hate to say that, but Michael, what was your thoughts on the game?
Shout out to our man, Efe Obada. Shout out to the franchise tag as well. Delighted for Efe. Efe showed me, I don't know if you've seen this, but Efe showed me a picture of his leg when it was operated on. And I don't know if he's put this on Instagram or not, but what he's come back from, I don't think people realize this, but like what he has come back from, and what this Commanders team has come back from. I actually wrote about this yesterday. 4-13 last year, now in a situation where they win their first playoff game in 19 years. That is insane. There's NFL fans out there that weren't even born when the Washington Commanders last won a playoff game. Never mind the fact they weren't even called that back in the day. The thing that actually got me was the run game for Tampa Bay. Yes, Bucky Irvin had 70 or 80 yards, but usually a guy that they relied on at certain times, Andy, for me, especially during the season, was Rachaad White. I feel like you could have got more from him in the game. I know how stout the Commanders' defense was on certain points in the game, but certainly for me, I wanted to see more from Jalen McMillan. I wanted to see more from Rachaad White generally. But just generally itself, in terms of the game, obviously you need a bit of luck at the end. Every team in that situation that gets far needs a bit of luck during the season. The Commanders got their luck against the Bears. They got their luck at the end of the game as well. Just really, really fun to watch. Jalen Daniels looks like a guy that's been in the league for years. I won't lie, fell asleep second half, watched it in the next morning, so didn't get to see as much of the tape as I wanted to in comparison to the other games. But certainly a tight game, probably the best game of the weekend in terms of that there. I don't really give them a chance in Detroit. I think it's written in the stars for Detroit to get to the Super Bowl. I don't think they could play anybody, and they'll win over the next 2 weeks.
Do you know what? I said for months I had this vision of Romeo Dobbs catching a winning touchdown in the NFC Championship game. I did feel like the Packers were the one team that could beat them, but I think now they're out of it, and especially with the week off as well, they'll be obviously rested now for the most important part of the season. But you never know. I think Daniels has proved that never write them off. I mean, no one thought they'd make the playoffs, let alone win. Playoff game start of the year. And I think no one had them winning 12 games. I think if you told them someone start the year, the Commanders make it, I think they probably would have thought they'll get 9 and 8, they'll squeeze into the 7th seed, probably lose in the first round to someone like the Rams or the Eagles. But fair play to them. Dan Quinn as well, I've got to give him credit, because we all talk about 28-3 and how it's
massive credit. Massive. Yeah. A guy that was disrespected by the Cowboys, in my opinion, Andy. Sorry about it. Like, he should have been given that job last year and wasn't given the job. Look where he goes now. He won't look back.
And you've seen how their defense has sort of crumbled since he left in Dallas as well. And they've actually today they've mutually agreed to part ways with Mike McCarthy, which I think is the best thing for the franchise. A lot of talk of Dion, a lot of talk. I think would be, I think personally, more of a emotional pick more than a sensible decision to take. I don't think, from what I've read and what I've seen, I don't know whether he's ready yet for the NFL head coach. I don't know, but either way, it is the end of the McCarthy tenure, and interesting to see who they've got. I think obviously Mike Vrabel's now gone to the Patriots. That's a great decision for them. So I think it'd be interesting to see who would go, because I thought they'd go for Vrabel. Dion, yeah. I mean, I said just then, I just don't believe he's ready yet. But
that'll end in tears either way. I mean, you can't just draft both your sons. Like, that's a whole. I'm gonna get annoyed now. But yeah, Dion's going to the Cowboys. I hope he does for the crack, just for the sheer crack. Why not? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of my favorite ever NFL players to watch from olden days. I think I look at the likes of Michael Vick, Deion Sanders, even someone like Donald Driver. I loved watching his highlights, and I think he'd be entertaining.
I grew up watching him on game day, so I obviously watched this also as well. But like, I grew up seeing him there for a few years, so I've been to a few Buffalo games before he went there, and I know how electric it is down there. I think Dion will go to the Cowboys. I mean, there's already interest there, so we'll see.
So finally, gone to the final game. It was Monday Night Football last night as the Rams took on the Vikings. Now, I wouldn't have been shocked if you told me the Eagles beat the Packers. I wouldn't have been shocked if the Commanders or the Buccaneers won. I wasn't shocked by the Bills winning, but I was shocked by not just the Rams winning by so many points against the Vikings and in a neutral venue, but just how good that Rams team were. I mean, Sam Darnold, it was a 27-9 win for the Rams over the Vikings, who the first ever 14-win team to be a wildcard team. But they sacked Sam Darnold 9 times, and by far his worst performance of the season. That was the old Sam Darnold we saw there, and last week as well, for that matter. And this Rams team looked really good, and this defense, especially, I've talked about before about the genius of Les Snead. I mean, took first round, but to get like Jaden Frisk and Turner and Byron Young as well, all on like second and third round picks. And then you just even go on the offense, getting Puka Nacua in the 5th round and Kieran Williams, I believe, in the 4th or 3rd. It's incredible work by him. And that defense, again, it's just this Rams team, they went for the F and picks attitude. They got the Super Bowl. Everyone thought they were in rebuild mode. They're back. They're really back. And I think they've got a great chance against the Eagles. I really do think they could beat them. And I think they just really taught Sam Darnold a lesson. And, I think Brian Flores at times, I think the blitz was sort of part of the problem. I think he's blitzed too much, like he always does. He sort of lives and dies by the sword. But I think there was times where the Vikings defense were left exposed by the blitz method, and the Rams were just easily, Stafford was easily getting it towards his receivers. But overall, yeah, I thought it was a really impressive performance. And I think personally, I'm going to say it now, I think they're the best chance of anyone beating the Lions. I think I'd back them more than the Eagles or the Commanders to beat the Lions. I really do think they are a team to be reckoned with. They hit form at the right time, 1-4 to start the year. They're now hit the divisional round in the best form out of anyone in the league. I'd say they're in such good form, and for me, I think any team playing them should be really scared of the Rams.
Chris Shula, the defense. I mean, you really added a lot in there. Chris Shula, defensive coordinator, grandson of Don. Defense really playing well. So, really, really exciting to see. I guess the one thing that maybe I can add here is they've got a quarterback that knows how to win. He knows how to lose. He knows what it's like to play in a Super Bowl. He knows what it's like to play for a shoddy organization that has no direction. Matthew Stafford looked like a man possessed on Monday night, and the way that he can get the ball, not just to Kyren Williams, but the way that he can find, and granted it did not happen on Monday night that much at all, but the way that he has found in recent weeks to find Puka Nacua, to find Cooper Kupp, to see different ways where DeMarcus Robinson and the other name was off me. It's been off me. I'll come back. To find ways to get these guys down the field in ways that systems or defensive systems can't get back from, I think is so interesting going into this game, because we talked earlier on about how the Eagles defense went up against the Packers and really found a way to contain them. Try and contain Matthew Stafford, who has an opportunity potentially to go into Detroit in an NFC Championship game to break their hearts. If it's scripted, it's happening, and I'll leave it at that. It's not scripted, but I think the Rams are a force to be reckoned with, and Sean McVay and the guys have been there. They're playing for a city now as well. Bring it on.
Yeah, and Stafford, of course, one of only 2 active quarterbacks to have won a Super Bowl. Of course, only 3 quarterbacks since Nick Foles have won Super Bowls since 2017. That was Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, and Matt Stafford. So Oh, of course, Aaron Rodgers. Apologies, I forgot about Aaron Rodgers, but he's probably not NFL player for much more longer. But yeah, I think Matt Stafford, he knows how to get it done. So yeah, credit to the Rams, and obviously that was a win that went out to the victims of the LA fire disaster. And I loved what they did. The coaching staff were wearing, was it LAFD or was it LAFD? This stands for the LA.
It was FD Fire Department, and then we've seen Whitworth do a big thing at the start. It was really cool, and fair play to them for doing that so quickly as well, and it worked really well.
And there was a nice clip of Aaron Donald enjoying the game in James Conner's box at the stadium, which is quite nice. But that is where we will end this podcast for today, our wildcard review with our guest today, Michael McQuaid. Michael, huge thanks once again for coming on.
Thank you very much, Andy, and looking forward to seeing you in New Orleans over the next few weeks. And folks, enjoy the last few weeks of the season.
Absolutely. And if you have been living under the rock and you don't know who Michael is, Michael, how can they find you on socials?
We're currently in the process of changing our username. It's going to be PF Ireland. It's currently PF Ireland on Instagram. It's NFL Ireland at the time of speaking on X. PF Ireland on TikTok. And appreciate support, folks. And
Well, go check it out if you haven't already. But in the meantime, this has been our wildcard review on Across the Pod. I've been your host, as ever, Andy Davis. Here was our guest today, Michael McQuaid. And we'll see you guys for our previews of the divisional round.